All right, happy week 2, everybody. So let's go ahead and get into the lecture for this week on psychedelic therapy, past to present. So I recognize that not everybody is going to be on as big of a screen that I have here. So I did include a link to this graphic so you can zoom in, zoom out. I don't know how to do that right now. But this is just like kind of a pretty cool timeline of psychedelics and how they have shown up in our history. So in the bottom left, you can see, so I don't know if y'all can see my cursor. I'm sure you can. But there's different colors along the timeline: blue, like kind of this pink, orange, and green. And so blue is historical and ceremonial use of psychedelics. So up until from 3000 BC, basically until 1919, which it continues to be used, but just giving a more detailed timeline. As one of them, as most of these substances are derived from naturally occurring plants and fungi, people from all over the world have used psychedelic drugs for thousands of years. Peyote, the plant that produces the drug mescaline, has been used in cultural rituals by Native American groups for more than 5,000 years. In South America, shamans from the tribes around the Amazon basin have used ayahuasca for hundreds of years in medicine and religious ceremonies. Certain African tribes around modern-day Gabon use the psychedelic properties of ibogaine found in bark of the Tabernan iboga shrub in coming of age ceremonies. And there is evidence of historic psychedelic mushroom use across the world from ancient Greece to Australia. So that's blue. In the pink, so really quick, around the mid to 20th century research, basically, so again, I'm not going to go in detail of this because a lot of this is covered in the rest of the PowerPoint. Basically, starting in 1919, Ernest Spath synthesized mescaline for the first time through the 30s with Albert Hoffman and Savage and Huxley, throughout the 40s, 50s, up until 1962, when Kelvin Stevens, he first synthesized mescaline, and then Timothy Leary is fired from Harvard University, in part due to his excessive psilocybin experiments. So you can see a heavy research here. Later in the PowerPoint, you'll see that there were about 10,000 publications with the use of LSD in various research, whether that was a exploratory randomized controlled trial, or like what kind of was a randomized controlled trial back then, between like 1947 and 1963 or something like that. Okay, so then the growing calls for prohibition, you can see in the 60s and 70s, that in 1965, as psychedelics become increasingly associated with the growing counterculture, Sandoz halts LSD production. Sandoz was the basically pharmaceutical company behind LSD 25. So you'll see that in the coming years too, that there are basically like synthetic derivatives of many of the different substances. So they just put numbers behind them. So in 1966, peyote, mescaline, LSD, and DMT are banned across the United States. And then in 1970, good old President Nixon signs the Controlled Substances Act, creating harsh penalties for possessing psychedelics across the US, effectively quashing research. Okay, so you can see between the orange and green, big lull here between 1970 and 2006. Does not mean that research has completely halted. Lots of underground research still happening. So in the green is the modern era of psychedelic research, which we will get into a ton this semester. So general timeline here. So some more graphics for you. Psychedelics around the world. In ancient times, 4000 BC to 1500 AD. Again, you can see North America, South America, parts of Africa that are all using various substances, peyote, psilocybin, ayahuasca. And then in ancient times, mind-altering plants were used in rituals for their healing powers and for pleasure. So again, I know that these graphics potentially on your laptop are very small. I have the links for you here. So part one of the history, this is all, you know, very far back. And then this red is the Prohibition era. So more, just some more specifics on Prohibition. So in 1897, Hefter, which some of you may be familiar, but this is one of the largest private funding agencies. This is actually part of the funding for my postdoc was through the Hefter Institute. So in 1897, Arthur Hefter isolates mescaline from the peyote cactus for the first time in 1901. Other people isolate ibogaine, and then so this is in the psychedelic discovery. So in 1912, coming into some prohibition policy, Kolisch creates MDMA as a byproduct while trying to synthesize another substance. Isn't that such the story? Then in 1938, Albert Hofmann synthesizes LSD. And then he discovers psilocybin in 1958. In 1962, Kelvin Stevens synthesizes ketamine. In 1966, California criminalizes the possession, sale, and manufacture of LSD. In 1968, Staggers-Dodd passes a bill making possession of psilocybin and other psychedelic substances illegal. And in 1971, the UN publishes the Convention on Psychotropic Substances, stating that psychedelics, including LSD, DMT, and MDMA, are now controlled substances. The U.S. Controlled Substances Act comes into effect, moving most major psychedelic drugs into Schedule I status, which I will explain in a couple of slides what that means. The UK passes Misuse of Drugs Act in 1971, placing controls on most known psychedelics. So that's in 1971, and then it kind of flows into this next graphic here. Part two of the history of psychedelics. This is from 2017 to 2020. I think I stated this in my first PowerPoint, kind of the renaissance, what's being dubbed as a psychedelic renaissance. 2017, the FDA grants MDMA assisted psychotherapy breakthrough therapy status. This comes with over like a decade of very published research. But remember that the Renaissance this like next wave, this second wave of psychedelic research really did start in the 90s with like little studies here and there, little pockets of researchers and permissions. In 2018, in August, the Compass Pathways, this is the large psilocybin company out of the UK that I was talking about last week, receives breakthrough therapy status from the FDA for a psilocybin synthetic derivative. So you'll also see in your video this week with John Oliver a little joke about some of that, because again, this is coming into the wave of commercialization, medicalization, which means copyrights and creating your own stuff, owning unique blends of things. So, okay. Then in 2019, in March, esketamine is approved in the form of Spravato by the FDA, followed by European Commission approval in December. In June of 2019, Denver, Colorado, and Oakland, California vote to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms. In November of 2019, the world's first microdosing study using LSD is approved in Auckland. Usona Institute receives breakthrough therapy status for psilocybin treatment for major depression disorder. Then moving into 2020, in February, Santa Cruz, California votes to decriminalize psychedelic substances, including psilocybin, ayahuasca, and peyote. In March, MindMed becomes the first publicly traded psychedelic company. In July of 2020, more than 45 companies claim to be engaged in the development and evaluation of therapeutic candidates from psychedelic substances. In November, a bunch of stuff happens. Oregon legalizes psilocybin and decriminalizes all drugs. Washington, D.C. decriminalizes entheogenic psychedelics. New research suggests DMT can stimulate the production of new brain cells, so that's neuroplasticity. Big deal here. In December, MAPS, the Multidimensional Association for Psychedelic Studies here in California, completes their first successful phase 3 trial of MDMA-assisted psychotherapy. So for those of you who may not be familiar with trials, and I can't remember if I talked about this last week, phase 3 is basically the last phase. It does have sometimes like A and B parts. Before FDA approval. It starts with pilot, phase 1, phase 2, sometimes phase 2A, phase 2B, phase 3, sometimes phase 3A, phase 3B. So just know that they've gone through lots of years and lots of steps, because phases of trials can take years, just a phase. So phase 3, I think they began this phase 3 trial in like 2018 or 2017, so it can take years, because in the phases more and more people are included as well. So analysts announced that psychedelics could become a $100 billion market. So many people start jumping in because I see the dollar signs. All right, moving into 2021, in January in Hawaii, a Senate bill put forward in January could legalize psilocybin and psilocin, otherwise known as magic mushrooms. In February, with California now introducing new legislation to decriminalize most psychedelic substances, we could see a sea change of decriminalization across the world. In March of 2021, over 285 active, soon to be active, and completed psychedelic trials are recorded around the world. So if you're ever interested, you can go to clinicaltrials.gov and see what kind of studies are registered. So at the bottom here, I also wanted to just point out a few stats to you about like what's going on in the world of psychedelic research. So at the bottom in blue, there's the distribution by target therapeutic area and substances. You can see depression and anxiety. About 44% of studies are focusing on that. 16% are focusing on SUDs, 8% on pain, 7% on sleep disorders, 7% on trauma, 7% on identity disorder, which I don't know what that means. And I'm like really hoping that that doesn't apply to things like body dysmorphia or something like that. So I'm wondering if that's more like dissociative identity stuff. I'm not sure. So if anybody cares to look it up, go for it. 7% on other, and then 5% on chronic brain disorder. Then along this line at the bottom, you can see what substances are currently being tested, researched. 33% of studies are using psilocybin, 26% are using ketamine, 10% are using GHB, 8% are using ibogaine, 10% are using LSD, 8% are using MDMA, 1% are using ayahuasca, or I'm sorry, I'm messing up here. Yeah, 10% LSD, 8% MDMA, 1% ayahuasca, and 4% DMT. So just so you know, that's the distribution of what's going on. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about scheduling of drugs. This is very important because it's a huge piece of why we are where we are. I'm moving myself here. Okay, so it basically starts at the bottom from least severe scheduling to the top most severe scheduling. So as you can see in the title, this placement is based upon the substance's 3 criteria: medical use, potential for abuse, and safety or dependence liability. So again, the substances at the top are seen to have virtually no medical use, high potential of abuse, low safety, or high dependence liability, which is kind of absurd. Like look at some of so Schedule 5 drugs, these are, some examples are cough preparations with less than 200 milligrams of codeine, Schedule 4, so again, Schedule 5, these are like the least, these have the most medical use, least potential for abuse, highest safety, and lowest dependence liability, as based on who the F knows. Because as you can see, as we're going through these, this scheduling doesn't make any sense. Like there's no scientific support for the scheduling of any of where these are. So again, Schedule 4, these are drugs with low potential for abuse and low risk of dependence, like Xanax, Soma, Darvin, Darvocet, Valium, Ambien, like I kind of disagree. So then going into Schedule 3, so these are substances or chemicals with a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. The abuse potential is less than Schedule 1 and 2, but more than Schedule 4. Some examples here are products containing less than 90 milligrams of codeine, ketamine, anabolic steroids, testosterone. Then moving up into Schedule 2, these are chemicals and drugs defined with a high potential for abuse, with use potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence. These are also drugs that are considered dangerous. So you can see here we've got Vicodin, cocaine, methamphetamine, methadone, oxycodone, fentanyl, Ritalin, Adderall, all these, stimulants and treatments for ADHD. Various other, and then you can see Schedule 1 drugs. So these are substances or chemicals defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. So some examples are heroin, LSD, marijuana, ecstasy, peyote, psilocybin is also on this, MDMA is on this, again, with zero support for the scheduling. So just wanting to give you a little bit of a background there. So I am not going to have you watch this, but I did give the link here. This is about a 2-hour panel with Rick Doblin. He's the CEO and founder of MAPS. That is, like I said, currently working with and has recently completed a phase 3 trial with MDMA here in the United States. So him talking about the history of psychedelics, like the legal history of psychedelics, on a panel. So if this is something of interest to you, I have the link. The video is also embedded in the PowerPoint. So when you go to Google Drive, you'll be able to see it, but just letting you know that that exists there. Oops, no, we don't want to do that. So here's just another maybe easier to read drug classification chart of the different schedules and the descriptions of why they are scheduled where they are, or kind of the description of the scheduling, but sincerely, the rationale as to why they're scheduled where they are is almost exclusively political. So here's the catch-22 of the scheduling of drugs here. So you can see the drug policy agent who said it's Schedule 1 because there's no accepted medical use. You have the doctor in the middle, I'm guessing with a plant of cannabis that has died. And then you have the research and development person saying you can't investigate its medical use because it's Schedule 1. So how do you get out of that? It has to be rescheduled. Okay, so let's move into our textbook here, Short Strange Trip, LSD, Politics, Publicity, and Mythology, from Discovery to Criminalization. So the Inquisition and genocide, as I talked about before, the use of psychedelics, of entheogens, they have been around forever. So although the genocidal pressures exerted on practitioners of indigenous religions of the Americas decimated the population and disrupted the orderly process of transmission of traditional skills, Native American populations are presently in a period of ethnic resurgence. Enough representatives of the traditional cultures of the past have survived to enable reemergence of previously suppressed traditions, values, rituals, and everyday practices. So there's was an attempt, and hopefully the populations will continue to grow and thrive, continue to grow, start to thrive in the ways that they are currently, but then continue to be able to thrive in different ways. So so this is kind of like the clash of indigenous practices and some Christian beliefs. Though we learned last week that there are definitely interwoven principles, meaning that they're like similar, just some of the biases, stereotypes, fears of other, ethnocentrism, things like that, really did create a clash. So by casting the healer as a witch, when we're talking about curanderas and shamans, if you cast this person as a witch and the hallucinogenic plants as tools of Satan, the church succeeded in virtually eradicating knowledge of these elements of pagan and shamanic consciousness. The parts that remained were relabeled with negative remarks that indicated their forbidden status, such as deadly nightshade, wolfbane, toadstool, and henbane. You can actually, like, there's still plants that are like called like frog poison and stuff like that. So just letting you know. So there was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1993. So it can be interpreted to protect powerful corporate employers from observing the statutory rights of their employees. Ironically, the drafters of RFRA excluded one key religious group, and that was the Native American Church. How convenient. Native Americans and the mainstream religious community worked together to get another statute passed in 1994, amendments to the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. It provides that, quote, the use, possession, or transportation of peyote by an Indian who uses peyote in a traditional manner for bona fide ceremonial purposes in connection with the practice of a traditional Indian religious is lawful and shall not be prohibited by the United States or by any state, end quote. So what followed was the appropriation of the Native American Church name. So individuals who are not members of the church, who did not have indigenous ethnic identities, they had no ties to the indigenous worship of the Holy Sacrament peyote. And so also know that peyote was the only named substance. So if there were any other plants like ayahuasca, ibogaine, psilocybin, they were not included in this act because the Native American Church only connected itself to peyote. All right, so just giving you some language here that if you ever see it, I can try to pronounce many of these. So basically the reason that I am giving you all of these words is to highlight the diversity of viewpoints on these substances. So, sorry if you can see that. So here, you can, as you read this week, some of the origins of working with psychedelics, psycholytics, that they were seen as psychotomimetics, which means that they mimicked the onset of psychotic symptoms. If you guys remember from your theories class, mimesis, which means kind of like mimicking the ways in which your clients talk and express themselves as a way of joining. That was known in structural family therapy, but I digress. And spoiler alert, psychotomimetics was abandoned because they realized that no, it doesn't mimic any sort of psychotic symptoms. So what they were thinking was, hey, maybe we can treat diagnoses like schizophrenia if we better understand them through mimicking the onset or creating these symptoms. And then we learned about entheogens last week with generating a religious experience. Fantasticants, which is any drug that induces vivid perceptual experience, or phantasmagoria. Psychosemics, mind fermenting, Oriogens, producing dreams, psychotogens. It's a substance that causes psychotic reactions. So you can see they have different semantics, different meanings, slightly different application. Yeah, psychodysleptics, which is disturbing the mind. So any of these that you see are really not necessarily meant to be interchangeable, but again, it's just a different viewpoint on essentially the term psychedelic. Okay, so the essential element of preparation, we're going to be talking about set, setting, and matrix, which is less talked about in this field. Usually it's set, setting, and integration. This is set, setting, so this is only preparation. Set, setting, and matrix, all part of the preparation. Integration is post drug administration, which we will talk about later in the semester. So set is an individual level phenomenon that has to do with the respondent's personality, personal history, life situation at the time of the drug exposure, psychological makeup, physical health, previous experiences with unusual states of consciousness, and expectations and or motivation for taking the psychedelic drug. These elements of preparation is where I cannot overemphasize the importance of us as guides, as people who are in a supportive role. The set is so key to this experience. The mindset, that's usually what set is short for, mindset, is so key in going into the experience because it really does influence every aspect of it. If you go in nervous, if you go in skeptical, if you go in unsure, scared, that you're going to have an unsure, scary, like effed up experience. That's not 100% guaranteed, but you'll have a much higher likelihood of that happening. So setting encompasses the local social factors and includes the circumstances and environment in which the drug experience occurs. So this is like the literal setting. Is it in a living room? When we did the experiment or the study at a University of Alabama at Birmingham, we were in a medical facility because we had to be, but we did what we could to kind of dress up the room in a less sterile way. So the people present, how they treat the user, the contributions of music, flowers, mirrors, photographs, other objects that are at hand during the psychedelic session, and what the administrator of the drug expects the user's reaction to be. So our expectancies are also there as well. So this is more of on a micro level, what's happening in the literal room, in the literal space. And then matrix, this includes the broad social setting and historical, cultural, and political circumstances in which the use occurs. So right now, again, there's this renaissance of psychedelic research. There's a largely positive social attitude towards psychedelics, which is helpful, I think, to influence set of the individual coming in. So if we ever do hit kind of a 1970 type attitude towards psychedelics, that's really going to influence this research. Individuals' willingness to be part of research studies, things like that. So the larger social attitude is really important. The situation in which the user is living at the time of the experience and the environment to which the user returns after the experience. So this is like in the study that we did at UAB, we're taking this person out of potentially like shelters, where they were currently living in halfway homes. Maybe they were unhoused. What kind of environment are they returning to, and how can they potentially like sustain any wisdom that was uncovered in their psychedelic experience. And then the element of matrix is the least understood and analyzed of these elements in most discussion of psychedelics, and it's one that is currently most in the state of flux. So idea for any PsyD students in here, any master students who are looking to be a PsyD or pursuing a doctorate, there's a study for you, is the larger attitude of social attitudes toward psychedelics. Okay, so just another timeline here. Again, I promise I won't go into detail. I always say that and I end up doing that. So the use of LSD from research to recreation. So Sidney Cohen was a big supporter of LSD and the research, the controlled use of this. Not so controlled as scheduling it as one, but saying like, hey, this has some potential here. So he did the first systematic assessment of the potential side effects and complications of psychedelic therapy in 1960 and provided some guidelines, basically saying like, they're low, but hey, they're there. This isn't a miracle. This isn't a cure-all. This isn't perfect. Like, there are guidelines that we should follow. So in 1961, the Harvard Psilocybin Research Project, at that time run by Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, was criticized by its sponsor, the Center for Research and Personality, for failure to adhere to these guidelines, similar to those described by Cohen. So we will get into a little bit more of the controversy there. So LSD controversies at the 1964 American Psychiatric Association convention happened, kind of a big uproar, as y'all read. There was a refusal of psychedelic review advertisement by the Progressive and American Psychologist. So this was, the Psychedelic Review was a new journal that was coming out, and they wanted some larger platforms to be able to talk about that, and other platforms, professional publication platforms, were like, nope. There was a consensus on the need for more and better designed research. This is something that we know from the 50s and 60s, a little bit of people going a little rogue, and methodologically doing some things that would like never fly today. There was slow progress in experimental design and research funding because of this controversy. So prescription and impact, government's explicit and vigorous prohibition of psychedelic research, as we know, happened. There were research restrictions while a black market for psychedelics developed, which what we know is, when things become illegal and they're prohibited, that does not mean that they cease to exist. It just means that there's no regulations, there's no checks, and whatever the substance is or procedure is, Roe v. Wade, just becomes way more dangerous. So there was conflation of psychedelic drug use with other illegal drugs. There was, I'll talk about this later, but basically, like, in some ways there was a similar myth to what happened with cannabis, of it being a quote gateway drug, which that's been like never supported, fully debunked, but for some reason we still believe it. I don't know, whoever does the marketing for these slogans, like, I need to meet them and pick their brain a little bit. And then, quite frankly, there was some fear of people who were using psychedelics or who had had psychedelic experiences. They were pretty silent. They were scared to speak up for fear of what might happen to them. So there was really no support. So this really silenced some of the allies, who would have been allies previous to all of this stuff kind of going on. So the classification of psychedelic drugs as controlled substances with no medical use, we know that happened in 1970. There were estimates of millions of Americans trying LSD and psilocybin, which, again, psilocybin is a naturally occurring substance, but if you get it in any sort of synthesized form, you don't necessarily know what's in it if it's not regulated, even though we know that there was a very low likelihood of that happening, of it being adulterated in some way or altered in some way. There were congressional hearings, anti-LSD campaigns, and laws against possession and sale. So just like kind of blitzed the media with how absolutely scary this substance was. As I don't know that we'll necessarily get into this in detail, but another one of the kind of theories behind why Nixon created the Controlled Substances Act is, one of the byproducts of any sort of psychedelic like LSD is a sense of oneness with your fellow human. So it doesn't matter where you live on this planet or in this universe, like whatever you believe. But this was also during the time of the Vietnam War. And there were people that were like, wait, like, war, what is it good for? And this really amplified that mindset. And the government was very fearful that they wouldn't get soldiers to go over and kill people from Vietnam. So that was another reason why, theorized as to why LSD and all of the other psychedelics were created, put on the Schedule 1, so that this oneness and this compassion and empathy for your fellow human being, that they would kind of squash some of that so they could get their compliant soldiers to go over and kill their fellow humans. And I'm not saying this in terms of any sort of like pro or anti position. That's a theory. There also was some evidence of government testing of believing that LSD was like a mind control drug that was like sent over by Vietnam to, or like other Asian countries to control Americans, to, I don't know, make them communists. I'm not sure. But again, like, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. So there were unusual beliefs and unpopular attitudes that have frequently been, quote, scientifically diagnosed as psychiatric illnesses. We know this, holy moly, within our field. There, as we know, hysteria, basically a made up diagnosis to, I don't know, demonize women. Several diagnoses for enslaved individuals. Like, I can't remember what the diagnosis is called, but it was basically like pathologizing individuals who were enslaved, who like wanted to escape being enslaved. And they were like, oh, here's a diagnosis for that. We need to pathologize that. We need to like put a diagnosis on it so that we can keep the status quo, basically. So the psychiatric, like, our history in this field is also super sketch, super exploitative. It can be have no medical backing at all. Quite frankly, I mean, I think about this, I'm going to go on a tangent for just a second. In the DSM, for example, with body dysmorphia, like, I recognize that in some, in the managed care world that we live in, which I also think is crap, is sometimes you need a diagnosis to open doors of treatment. But at the end of the day, like, body dysmorphia as applied, for example, to trans individuals is absurd, and it is pathologizing in many ways. So if anybody has feelings on that, feel free to reach out to me. But I just, these mislabeled, the misuse of mental health diagnoses is still around. As we know, homosexuality only came out of the DSM in like the DSM-3. So that was like in the, I don't know, I think it was like the 80s or something like that. So like, we just like we're evolving. I have hope, but like, our checkered history, like, just know that our field, as much as we like to think of it as warm and fuzzy, we have a really crappy background too. So diagnosed as a psychiatric illness, spiritual malice, and community affliction based on personal and cultural value judgments. So as we know, the demonization of curanderas and shamans, and I mean, I'm even thinking of, labeling somebody as a witch, and all witches were women generally, that, we do what we can to kind of vilify individuals and keep a status quo in this field. And in the history with psychedelics, there's no difference. So fears of corruption and psychosis. There were concerns that psychedelics may corrupt youth and induce psychosis. What we are still researching and wanting to understand is if somebody does have a family history of psychosis, do psychedelics potentially potentiate what may be an inevitable psychotic break. So if you are already kind of that is already kind of in your DNA, something that might happen to you, at this point, there is we're still researching and understanding if if psychosis might be, or a history of familial psychosis might be a contraindication in some ways to psychedelics, even though there are some exploratory studies being done on individuals with schizophrenia. So we'll see. So there were reports of damage to human chromosomes caused by LSD in March of 1967. We know that this is crap. Spoiler alert, hopefully you've done the reading already. There's an increase in chromosomal abnormalities detected after exposure to LSD, which there were confounding variables that really didn't support this. Later research could not replicate the findings. Patients with schizophrenia showed a threefold excess in damaged chromosomes, tetragenic effects, and chromosome damage. So M. Cohen's findings of chromosome damage extrapolated to potential tetragenic effects. And tetragenic means related to or causing developmental malformations. I needed to make a little note for myself on that. There were reports in popular press that raised concerns about LSD causing genetic damage, which again, debunked, no support for that. More than 60 studies on chromosome damage were completed in 5 years, probably because there was funding. That's what happens with research, you kind of chase the funding. And then there were evaluation of children exposed to LSD in utero and found morphological rearrangements in chromosomes, again, could not be replicated. So more controversial findings and contradictory studies. Daniel Freeman questioned these chromosomal changes. There were double-blind controlled study that found no definitive evidence of chromosomal aberrations after LSD exposure. There was a Danish study that reported bone marrow damage in mice, but any subsequent studies could not reproduce these results. There were multiple chemicals that were known to produce chromosomal breakage in cultured cells. So again, this could have been exposure in the lab that, you know, if there are other substances that can create this, then we have to do retests. And any of the retests did not replicate these findings. So synthesizing these conflicting findings, there were a review of 68 studies that concluded that pure LSD in moderate doses does not damage chromosomes or cause genetic damage. Surprise, surprise. This review examined the possibility of genetic or tetragenic effects on children and found the risk to be very small. There were limited subsequent studies on chromosomal damage effects in humans, probably because the funding went away and they were like, all right, I guess we can't run with this narrative anymore. Animal models can support the consensus that LSD is not tetragenic or oncogenic, which is causing the development of tumors. I wish that I could figure out how to do show my notes to just myself here. If anybody knows, reach out. So some safety and adverse effects. LSD is medically safe and non-toxic when taken in usual doses, which just basically means that they're not too high. As determined by science or your body composition or whatever. As we do know, there is a potential for disturbing psychological experience. They're known as either bad trips or bummers. We'll talk a little bit more about that. In controlled settings, it is very easy to support somebody who could go into a bad trip. Ultimately, a bad trip just really means that they're like in an environment or their mindset was in a way that they weren't maybe they're in a good mindset to be taking psychedelics, and now they're in what could be pretty terrifying. Like I mentioned last week, maybe some of you have, you know, gone to concerts or recreationally used psychedelics and been like, whoo, like never again. It really does matter your mindset and the setting that you are in. So adulteration just basically means that the substance has been altered in some way. There was fear that there was adulteration of LSD with strychnine, which was a myth. So has been some historic analysis that found no adulterants in street LSD. So again, if we can't stop people from using, we're going to try some scare tactics here. There have been no known cases of fatal LSD overdose. Prolonged psychotic reactions are possible in vulnerable individuals. Vulnerable individuals are individuals who are considered to have a weaker ego, or individuals who have a history of psychosis or any sort of psychotic diagnoses in their family. So some challenges of controlled scientific study on psychedelic drugs: chromosome damage. We know that this raised concern about genetic risks and safety of research subjects, which was ultimately debunked. There were conflicts between government agencies. Officials faced conflicts between scientific approach and then personal opinions and morals. And in many ways, the personal opinions and morals kind of won, in that there was a dependence on social policy. So as we know, funding agencies tied studies to social policy, relying on congressional appropriations. So basically, the funding agencies were like, we're gonna step away from this, and we're gonna let Congress appropriate the give appropriations essentially for funding. So they appropriated the funds for studies, and they were like, no. And then there was a symbolic social movement. LSD was seen as a symbol of rebellious opposition to the government policies, values, and behaviors, therefore affecting funding agencies' willingness to kind of step into it, and then increasing congressional and political resistance toward, and like in many ways like malice toward, psychedelics. So some implications and speculations on psychedelic drug use. So there was a lure of dramatic publicity. There were positive or negative, either positive or negative publicity attracted users and created hostility among opponents. I mean, just take a look at our current political climate. It's just unfortunately kind of how it works. Like we talked about, prohibition-based drug policies. There were increased profits for illegal entrepreneurs and added risk of legal consequences if you were to possess or use any psychedelics. It was really disheartening for clinical investigators. There were challenges and controversies that demoralized many researchers who stepped away from the field. And ultimately, I mean, it kind of went into hibernation for about 40 years anyway. So it wouldn't have been a very good track from 1970 to about 2005. And then there were the dismissal of long-term effects. Societal judgment disregarded potential therapeutic benefits and focused on genetic risks and cognitive changes, even though they were not supported. It was just a narrative that was being pushed. So there was limitations in early understanding of psychedelic effects. There were some sensation-focused description. Early accounts focused on immediate sensation, neglecting the role of psychedelics in ongoing life, which can be really helpful. What we're looking, they were focusing on some of the hallucinations, some of these visual hallucination. There was a neglect of personal transformation. Anecdotal reports of personal transformation were not confirmed by previous long-term studies. And they weren't confirmed basically because no one tried. There was a bias toward adverse effects. Early reviews emphasized adverse effects, overlooking positive transformation due to a negative perception of psychedelics. That matrix, with a quote, "The most consistent personal pattern was a lessening of concern over status, competition, material possessions, and other pursuits of achievement-oriented society." What a threat to capitalism. Let's get this the F out of here, because we need people who are concerned over status. For our society to work in its current form, we need competition. We need people to want material possessions. We need them to be achievement oriented. We need them to be good little workers. So if there's a drug out there that tells that people are like, "Nah, I'm good, I don't need to partake in this society," we would literally collapse if enough of us did that. So super scary. So let's demonize this as much as we can. And there were inadequate measures. Surprise, surprise. Measures were used in studies that may have failed to capture the types of changes that occurred. In some ways, this was because of the infancy. In some ways, I think that researchers can be bought and paid for to push a narrative. That's just my skepticism of the field. So there was also a societal response and lack of rational decision-making. Weird, politically charged harm reduction. There were strategies for users of illegal drugs that became politically charged. There was a neglect of the potential benefits, like I said, a shift toward a negative perception. So it just really went from, wow, this stuff's pretty cool, to like, we can't do this. And then, which ultimately resulted in a lack of exploration. So there were few studies on stable, non-problematic drug users or workable contexts for illegal drugs. So really moving against harm reduction model as well. For those of you who have been in chemical dependency, you know about that. For those of you who have not, you will learn about it. And then there were the formation of psychedelic clusters. So the Native American church was its own cluster, and it remains a significant spiritual movement with Native and non-Native adherents. There were some psychologists and psychiatrists who formed their own cluster. Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, they established exploration centers for psychedelic experience, attracting seekers and media attention. That was one of the big, like, criticisms of Timothy Leary. Like, one was that he was very charismatic, but sometimes to be a researcher, you like can't be so charismatic. The Merry Pranksters, this was a loosely organized cluster that traveled across the US in the 60s, giving rise to another psychedelic cluster like Grateful Dead and Hog Farm that y'all read about. Stephen Gaskin and the Farm, this was a cluster that moved from San Francisco to Tennessee, founding a community described as a psychedelic church. So people just kind of breaking off and still trying to be a part of this. There was profound personal transformation and perspective on psychedelics. So the last thing from this chapter is Lisa Bieberman. She believed profound transformations were possible through psychedelic drugs based on personal encounter and interpretation. She personally rejected the term psychedelic. She preferred the term phanerotyme or phanerothime, depending on if you are what dialect you use. This is a term coined by Aldous Huxley, which emphasized mental and spiritual clarity. And then there were some assessment of the transformative potential could only be made over long term based on the effects of everyday life, which there was no capability to do that given the restrictions around psychedelics. And then the transformative potential of psychedelics was seen as dependent on the receiver's intent and understanding, like sacramental use, which we absolutely adhere to today. So that was chapter 3. Let's move into chapter 4, the history of the use of hallucinogens in psychiatric treatment. So for this chapter, they focused on 2 approaches to the use of psychedelics: psycholytics, which is considered soul loosening, and psychedelic, which is considered mind manifesting. As you know, toward the end of the chapter, there was a proposal for the combination of these 2 approaches. So like I alluded to a little bit at the beginning of this lecture, the psychotomimemic paradigm was essentially like the kickoff of clinical trials with psychedelics. So the first phase of this was the first phase of clinical research in the 1950s. Researchers that were influenced by the Swiss pharmaceutical company Sandoz, which I alluded to earlier, believed that the main impact of LSD was to produce experiences similar to acute psychosis. So they thought that LSD could be administered to psychiatrists in order to allow them to gain firsthand understanding of their patients' psychotic states. In the mid-1950s, they began to suspect metabolic aberrations was the cause of psychosis, which was disproven. And then, like I said earlier, there were 10,000 publications on LSD between 1943 and 1970, which makes it the most researched pharmacological substance ever. So some prehistory here: pharmacological attempts to influence one's state of consciousness date back to the 19th century with the use of chloroform and hashish to deepen hypnotic states. I watch a lot of true crime. So like when I saw chloroform, I'm like, dang, like how many deaths were there? Or how did they control this in a way that people didn't just die from it? Then barbiturates were used to decrease cortisol or cortical control to make suppressed psychological material accessible. So this was all in the paradigm of using psychodynamic approaches. That was the main psychological approach applied to psychedelics. And then Baroni was the first to use mescaline in a psychotherapeutic setting. So just a little bit of history here. Some of the early therapeutic use: Stoll's study in 1947, where subjects experienced strong personal emotions and memories during LSD sessions. Bush and Johnson in 1950 was the first to report on LSD use in psychotherapy. Chandler and Hartman in 50 and Ronald Sandison found improvement in neurotic patients after a single dose of LSD. Sandoz's, so the pharmaceutical company in 1950, small doses of Delicid. So this was LSD 25. Like I said, companies will make derivatives so that they can own it, copyright it, TM it, R it. I don't know what all of those things are, but make it their own. So if anyone wants to use it, they have to pay for it. Caused affect disturbances, hallucination, and reliving of repressed memories. And then psychoanalytic orientation. Early clinicians integrated LSD into psychoanalytic therapy for releases of repressed material and mental relaxation. So again, this was in the time of believing that like our problems were basically living in the unconscious and living in repressed memories. So we have to figure out ways to elicit those memories. So that's why hypnosis was a really big approach during this time period. And then the development and challenges of psycholytic therapy. Lunar used low doses of LSD to intensify imagery and induce regression and catharsis. Frederick King, he was an early proponent of LSD as an adjunct to psychotherapy, which ultimately is how we use it today. Not LSD, but psychedelics as an adjunctive treatment to psychotherapy. So psycholytic therapy is they're serial treatment sessions with low doses of LSD or psilocybin that are embedded in conventional therapeutic processes. Again, some talk therapy where there is preparation where no substances are used, and then there's a drug administration and possibly several drug administrations. But you're doing the talk therapy, you're doing what would be considered traditional talk therapy under no drug effects at all. So Sanderson's designation of psycholytic therapy or psycholysis for LSD assisted psychotherapy that happened in 1960. And then there was a decline in research because of the legislation banning hallucinogens. And then, so there was a halt in research, and the only places where it was still happening was in Czechoslovakia and in the UK. So a note of what has been learned therapeutically. Psychodynamic, like I said, was the preferred approach applied to adjunctive use of LSD. However, they found that a more connected and humane approach was thought to be more helpful. So if you remember, in psychoanalytic or psychodynamic approaches, somebody would be like on this couch, and I would in many ways like have my back turned to them and would be allowing them to free associate. So this is when the idea of the tabula rasa, like the blank slate, really was prominent, of like, I am just a vehicle for their learning. Our relationship to my person on the couch is not important. And we're finding, and we're evolving in our field to say like, wait, I, as a therapist or as a guide, as a person, as a fellow human being in that experience is very important. So we have found that in order for the individual to really get some of the benefits of this, that they need to have a rapport and a trust and relationship with the person who's guiding them, especially because they're about to be in a really vulnerable state. So if I believe that you might exploit me, abuse me, take advantage of me, do something harmful to me, like I'm probably going to have a crappy experience. So the use of LSD places greater demands on the therapist than does conventional psychotherapy. So in some ways, there's like this narrative of psychedelics makes therapy easier for the therapist, because I think there's some myths that like the work is done by the substance, and it's really not. This can be really taxing work. So the patient's increased regression and anxiety, as well as the potentially stronger transference and countertransference reaction, can be really challenging for the therapist. So this is not like for the faint of heart. If you choose to pursue this work, you have to be really vigilant on yourself with the therapist stuff, and working with the countertransference that you might be experiencing, and the very strong possibility for transference coming to you from the client, patient, participant, whatever. So there are 3 phases of psychedelic therapy: preparation, the psychedelic session, the working through, also known in many ways as integration. So the preparation is discussions between the patient and therapist about any difficulties, goals, and aspirations. So this is really trying to prepare them to be in the right and most beneficial mindset for the psychedelic session, which what is, and current, like this is current, high dose of insert MDMA here, psilocybin here, but here LSD or a similar substance. And this is meant to loosen defenses, induce reliving, abreaction, and insight. And then there's the working through, which is sorting out new insights and discoveries, shedding old maladaptive defenses, and exploring new ways of experiencing and reacting. I always talk about this as like, what actionable steps can we create to take the wisdom, take whatever learning insights that you've gathered and put them into action. And then the importance of post-session integration, patients need to remain in therapy and have appropriate social support for sustained effects. So in the study that I was a part of, we had a minimum of 4 post sessions that were at a minimum an hour each, for them to really feel support and quite frankly to kind of make a game plan. So particularly with the population I worked with, these were individuals who were deeply rooted in the using community. So how are we going to give you resources, or how are you going to take the, you know, kind of new insights and these new aspirations that you have into the exact same environment? Like, let's create a game plan for figuring out how this can be sustained. So that's really important too. Okay, so key aspects of psychedelic therapy. The therapeutic relationship is super important, just like we know in common factors. The connection that we have with our clients is the most influential in terms of outcomes. So having a positive, trusting relationship with warm and giving therapists is crucial. Being willing to surrender to the experience. We'll talk a lot more about this throughout the semester, but patients are instructed to surrender, wear eye shades, and use headphones for a focused experience. The mantra that we gave our participants in the study that I was a part of was trust, let go, be open. So using music as a therapeutic tool, music helps structure the session, facilitate catharsis, enable the patient to let go. So they are literally wearing eye shades, headphones, so that the experience can be truly internal. The only time that we ever interacted with our participants was if they struggled, that we would ask permission to place our hand on their arm or on their shoulder, and ground them, let them know that they're safe, let them know that where they are, orient them to time and space in many ways, because that's disoriented when you are in this experience. A permission to express any negative feelings. So participants are encouraged to express negative feelings without transference interpretations attempted. So like if you're sharing something with me as your guide, like I'm not going to sit here and try to interpret what you're talking about, I'm just taking it for what it is. And then big considerations for the patient well-being. Support and assistance may vary based on the patient's ego, resources, and outdoor experiences in nature can be beneficial. So you're always thinking about the client patient's well-being first. All right, so psychedelic therapy, which is the combination of psychedelic and psycholytic therapy, initially viewed as distinct approaches in Europe and North America, where in Europe they're doing psycholytic, in North America we're doing psychedelic. And both approaches have elements of childhood memories and mystical experience, but view them differently. Psychedelic approach is the proposed integration of psycholytic and psychedelic methods for comprehensive outcomes, which is believed possibly where the field is going, the trajectory of the field. Application and benefits. There were several studies that have applied psychedelic approach showing positive effects. Some safety considerations. So contrary to popular belief, high dose psychedelic sessions may offer, just a second, I'm gonna sneeze. Ooh, okay. may offer more complete resolution and integration despite potential acute effects and collapsed defenses. So yes, somebody is in a vulnerable state, but it can be really therapeutic. So the gradual uncovering is feasible in psycholytic therapy, but low dose sessions have limitations in accessing intense emotional material. So in order to get to that material, you are encouraged to do higher doses. So the Swiss Society for Psycholytic Therapy utilized psychedelic therapy with higher doses of LSD and MDMA in group settings, allowing for individual experiences and permissive group interactions, which proved to be a little bit chaotic. All right. Then there's anacolytic therapy. This was developed by Martin and McCreerick. They were out of London, utilizing medium doses of LSD for deep regression and direct satisfaction of infantile needs. So super psychodynamic in this, as you can see in the next one. So in this anacolytic approach, the therapist or the guide is like in some ways like swaddling, holding the person. They make close physical contact. They feed them warm milk. So it's almost like a very intense approach to reparenting, providing affectionate gestures, fostering this symbiotic union that is theoretically formed with your caregiver, primarily a mother, and having experiences of a good breast. So this has like object relations all over it too, very psychodynamic in nature. Anacolytic sessions observed by Groff as extremely healing experiences, filling the emotional vacuum caused by deprivation and frustration. So there's some controversies. There were concerns about the intimate therapist-patient touch and deviation from conventional therapy principles that limited the widespread use of anacolytic therapy, like not wide used at all. And then there's hypnodelic therapy, which Ludwig and colleagues combined hypnosis with LSD to channel the psychedelic states in a structured therapeutic direction, aiming for problem resolution and reliving childhood memories. So this hypnotic induction before the LSD administration facilitated examination of difficulties in catharsis. So they're administering LSD while the person is in a hypnotic state. And then there was a comparative study with individuals addicted to opioids showing more positive outcomes with the addiction of the element of hypnosis here. Hypnodelic therapy was not widely adopted. So, quite frankly, I don't know how widely used hypnosis is. Okay, so some group treatment here. There was time-intensive nature. So knowing that psilocybin has a 6 to 8 hour active period. MDMA has about the same, slightly longer, I think 8 to 10 hours of active period. Some can have an active period of like up to 24 hours. So that's super intensive for us as the guides, very expensive. So time intensive nature of individual hallucinogen assisted therapy. So they thought, okay, what if we did group sessions so we could maximize efficiency, because efficiency and profits over people in some ways. But I do think that this was well-intentioned to say like, hey, these are substances that bring people together. What if we were to therapeutically bring them together? What would happen? So LSD treatment in conventional group settings proved incompatible with the psychedelic experiences. These group sessions during preparation and integration phases were feasible because they were sober, but individual sessions under the drug effects were preferred. So when they were under the influence in these group settings, there were too many variables. You didn't know if somebody was going to kind of trigger another person. You didn't know how their experiences were going to interact with one another. It was just like way too chaotic. So there was some successful group work with low doses of LSD, which generally you're not in an altered state of mind. So some investigators reported positive outcomes in regressive settings with group therapy. There was an evolution. So permissive settings that encourage regression emerged in the early 1960s. Patients were allowed to act out emotions, experience transference reactions, and engage in expressive therapies. There were like keyed to break things. There were rooms set up where they could kind of destroy stuff. So greater feelings of safety and trust were experienced. There was exploration of inconsistencies and traumas, revealing transferences and defense mechanisms, new self-experiences, and a sense of belonging in a larger framework. Group therapy also was found to alleviate transference issues with multiple therapists present. So you weren't the focus of anybody's current transference. Another thing here, I don't know if it made it into my PowerPoint, but psychedelics in many ways are what are called like truth seekers. So what we know about trauma is in many instances, we tell ourselves a narrative that isn't accurate. So it's an opportunity to be emotionally kind of distanced from the recollection of that trauma or those experiences, and be able to see a more I hesitate to use this term, but I'm not sure of a better one, like more of an objective truth. So the Swiss group and other therapists have developed a useful group approach combining individual psychotherapy sessions with psycholytic group sessions using MDMA and LSD. Group sessions involved periods of introspection, therapeutic interventions, and post-session integration circles. Group approaches may offer cost-effective treatment options for various disorders. I do think that this is kind of a cool approach where you do some preparation and some integration sessions in a group setting, just so you're with people who also have had this experience, because it can be so unique. So super important here, the education of y'all. Ensuring competence and safety. So there have been like a lack of standardized training programs. Many people have created their own curriculum, but therapist education varies among groups, often limited to research therapists. That's how I got my training, was through my experience with research. The training of therapists using LSD therapy with outpatients remains unknown. It's also just a lesser used substance. As you know, the majority of research being done today is with psilocybin. So there is a curriculum for psycholytic therapists. Lunar at Göttingen, I don't know how to say that, University, developed a curriculum involving observing experienced therapists, role reversal, self-experiences with psychedelics, which is seen to be a big key in a lot of the training, is that you yourself do you have a psychedelic experience. They offer theoretical seminars and clinical work on the ward or in the hospital setting. So this is similar for any of you who have started maybe with the EFT externship. It's a lot of supervision, like a lot of oversight of what you're doing, from masters, from people who are experienced, to see, do you have fidelity to the model? So there's a training curriculum for MDMA-assisted psychotherapy through MAPS that established a curriculum including online classes, self-experience with MDMA, discussion of therapeutic sessions, and facilitation of sessions for their therapists. In Switzerland, there's a curriculum for psycholytic therapist, which is a comprehensive curriculum requiring licensure as a psychotherapist, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, which I think should be the absolute minimum of people that we allow to guide people through psychedelic experiences. This includes theoretical seminars, self-experience with MDMA and LSD, and peer supervision groups. Education for psilocybin trials. There's some short-term educational courses that have been developed by trial managers, including online courses, workshops, and self-experience with psilocybin. The ISSP, or the International Society for Substance-Assisted Psychotherapy, I put the link in the notes of this slide. They incorporated in 2019 to systematize knowledge, establish standards, develop treatment manuals and curricula, and ensure certification and quality assurance. So you can see there's many people who have created certification programs, training programs. So thorough and systematic education for therapists is crucial to mitigate the risks associated with psychedelic assisted therapy. Again, your power in this is so elevated. So multiple self-experiences with the use of psychedelics are recommended. Inadequate training may lead to complications and hinder the progress of psychedelic medicines. The establishments of organizations like ISSP support the development and standardization of these treatments. So it's making sure that everybody's, doing things the best way that we know how. In many ways, it has an evidence-based spirit to it. So advances in psychedelic assisted therapies, integration of psycholytic and psychodynamic approaches, therapists successfully combined. There's a hope that therapists can successfully combine these approaches to essentially take the advantages of both. Medical economics may drive the prevalence of group treatments, although suitability varies for severely traumatized or patients with more, what would be considered more severe diagnoses, or enactogenic substances. This is the introduction of entactogens. Entactogenic. So entactogens, which expands treatment options and addresses a broader spectrum of conditions. Again, these are like directions where are we going. So some benefits for diverse populations. Psychedelic assisted treatments benefit individuals with psychiatric and emotional disorders and offer personal growth opportunities for healthy individuals with personal problems. We're going to talk a lot more throughout the semester about the diversity within this field, which isn't great at the moment, but there's lots of push for more inclusivity. So there's some self-healing mechanisms. The activation of feelings, imagery, memories, perception, and ego dissolution contribute to treatment successes and new perspectives. So again, there are some contraindications. There are people, like every approach isn't going to work the best for everybody. So here's some contraindications for people with weak ego structures, individuals who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorders. I think in many ways, we need more evidence. We need more research. I think these are just theoretical in many ways. Severe addictions, which we're learning isn't necessarily accurate, and careful consideration of somatic diseases. Wider adoption of these methods could lead to broader patient benefits, aligning with Freud's vision of chemical substances influencing therapy. And that is it.